whatever you want to
Well,
do.
hold on a moment there. Does anybody object to the meeting being recorded?
No.
All right. Is everyone actually at their microphone and logged in? Let's just go down it. Ericos, you're here, right?
Yes, I am. No objection to recording.
Luda?
Yes, I'm here. No objection to recording.
Mace?
I'm here.
All right.
Record away.
Reacher?
Present. No problems with recording.
And Shank.
Shank here, you can record.
All right. So we'll go ahead and start recording then.
Started.
All right. So the first question I have for everybody is, did everybody get the email that I sent out to all the accounts that there was going to be a meeting, just to make sure everybody's email's actually working this time?
I got the email, but it's not being forwarded to my regular email yet, so I just happened to have logged into it. Over.
Shank has gotten no email. I don't know if supposed to get the website email. I don't have that. And there's none in my Shank GT email.
Okay. So Shank needs it converted over and Luda needs it converted over. Did anybody else not get it? All right. So that seems like it's a thing that needs to get taken care of, and we'll work on it when we're done with this.
Shank, can you please PM me your email? The reason why you didn't get the vice president is I have that one not set up yet correctly.
I'll Discord that right now.
Thank you. And Luda, I thought I had yours set up.
I might need to double check my junk email, but yeah, I just haven't seen it there yet.
All right. Did we have anything else related to the transition that needed to be talked about or worked through? Anybody really? The transition, by the way, from previous BoD to the current one is what I'm referring to. Okay. Not hearing any issues currently, so I guess we'll move on. The next thing is to talk about the bylaw proposal from the committee created by the AWC. I guess the easiest thing here would be to have Ludo talk about this for a moment, and then we can discuss it. I don't really want to get super into the technical details of it because we all have those processes. Obviously, I'm not telling people they can't, but that's my preference. We all have other processes of injecting into the final creation of it. But I would like to discuss the matter as a whole, obviously, since we will have to vote on it as a bylaw change. So, Luda, did you have stuff you'd like to present on it?
Hey, Ursus. Yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity to talk about this. And as you can tell from other folks in the room, we have a couple of our key players, folks who regularly participated, including Aha, Runa, Reacher, Stone, and also Ericos dialed in sometimes, and I know that you did as well as a couple of times. So I just wanted to make sure that since this is something that once we have the big discussion and vote with AWC, that this will have to be voted on by the board of directors. I just wanted to give an opportunity to see if there were any questions. And also I wanted to give a chance to my colleagues if they had anything to add or if they could help answer any questions at this session. So let me see if any of those who worked on the committee has anything else to add. Other than that, we are open for questions. Aha, I'll start with you. Did you have anything to add? Over. Does he by chance have permission to unmute in this room?
That was my fault. I didn't unmute myself.
Okay.
Apologies.
I don't over muted.
I have myself double muted and I had only unmuted one. Anyway, so yeah, I'm here I don't have anything major to add to what Lita used to introduce us. I'm here to answer any questions that you all might have about the bylaws, given that you may not have had the opportunity to discuss those in depth at the AWC meeting or with any of the people directly involved in creating these bylaws. So I just want to make sure that everyone has the chance to operate in good faith, clarify any misunderstandings or details that need to be fixed. That's all for me.
Thank you, Ahat. Does anybody else, Runa or Reacher or Stone, do you have anything else to add that you would like to mention at this time?
I don't mind if y'all can hear me. I know they said there's a few loopholes. Some of the stuff we were working on, we did leave intentionally vague to go back and fill in. We were trying to work within our time constraint. We did as much. I think we came out with quite a bit for the time constraint of what we did it in. I wish we would have saw a little bit more participation from some of the chapters, but that happens. But yeah, no, still pretty happy with how it came out.
All right. Runa or Stone, do you have anything to add?
This is Stone. I'm actually also very happy with how they came out, and I'm hoping that we are going to be able to progress towards them at a reasonable speed.
Thank you, Stone. Runa?
I think the only other thing, sorry. I think the only other thing we really need to work on is continuing to be transparent about what our goals are and when we intend to act on the bylaws going forward. That way, those who worked on them and those watching have clear expectations. That'll be the biggest thing going forward, is managing those expectations and keeping us on track.
Thanks, Runa. Yep. One of the things that has come up in discussions with AWC and with other folks is that people think that there are potential loopholes or places where the bylaws aren't strong enough. And if there's anything major like that, we definitely want to address those. We did intentionally not address everything that we thought needed to be fixed or updated with the committee because we thought that that authority should better go to a chapter council. And so that is why, we mentioned that, there may be a couple of things. So we feel like, some of the things that came up, we definitely thought that those were better addressed by the chapter council. And just the whole committee, we're very proud of what we put together, the time that we spent doing this, not only at the dozen or so meetings, but at countless hours outside of that, doing the writing, looking at the research, gathering as much information as we can, and also just communicating it as widely as possible. Everything short of personal phone calls to everyone pretty much is what we did. So yeah, that's what we have. Thanks again for letting us talk about this today. And if anybody has any questions or particular concerns that they'd like to talk about right now, we'd love to host those. Over.
Okay. Awesome. I do have a personal, or not a personal concern, a general concern. Do we, and I'm going to ask the question and I'm going to kind of explain my reasoning. Do we have a plan for a greater buy-in from Dagorhir chapters? No, online vote so far of Dagorhir chapters has ever met the same number of voters as any RWC since I've been in Dagorhir that I've seen, including the vote to approve this one. It didn't even make a quorum of the 24 chapters who the report that I got said worked on it. So I'm not saying that that's terrible. I'm saying, do we have a plan to address that to try and get more buy-in? Because if we vote on bylaws that say we have to have a quorum to do things, and then that quorum's never achievable, we now have a committee that never does anything, that can never do anything. So is there a plan with that to maybe get more buy-in from the chapters, to get the chapters to actively state their approval or disapproval or acknowledgement of this? Thanks.
No, thanks, Ursus. That's a good question. And I guess I could start out and then I'd happily let others chime in. So one of the things that we did in this particular committee is, first off, we established how the committee itself would vote. And that we decided was going to be the majority of whoever was able to spend the time working on the bylaws would be how we would accept our votes, because we knew, especially with the summer months, especially with the state of COVID and just the state of chapters dropping away, new ones coming in, to try and reach everybody or to try and get a response from everybody. We had no way of knowing that everybody was actually interested in responding. So as far as the committee itself, that's why we made it basically a group of the willing. These folks who participated definitely seem to have been some of the most willing people to try and put this together. So that's what we decided to do. Now, as far as beyond this, getting enough participation in the chapter council, I agree that that is not going to be necessarily an easy thing to do. It's easy when you go to Ragnarok and you have an RWC and everybody's there for the battle, but not everybody wants to spend Sunday evening like we are and talk about rules and bylaws and things like that. You just don't find that type of person everywhere. So it's not going to be an immediate thing. We're going to have to work on it a little bit by a little bit. But I think in the end, what we'll end up with are the people who are most invested in the game. They will participate, and we will have to adjust if we find that we don't have enough people who participate. So that's what I have. Aha or Reacher, Runa, Stone, if you have anything else to add, please feel free.
One of the barriers that we faced during the creation of this committee was convincing the non-RTR chapters to be operating in the good faith assumption that this committee would actually produce quantifiable, actionable results that would then be followed through on. So, as I don't know that I would necessarily consider the votes that we had, the 17 chapter vote, I think that it was, to approve the bylaws at the end of our bylaw proposal at the end of August. I don't know that I would consider that necessarily to be representative of the number of chapters that would be willing to participate in chapter council meetings and stuff like that, because I know, at least from the people that I have talked to, there is a prevalent sentiment that whatever this committee was going to decide, it might not actually do anything. So I think that suggesting that this 17 chapter vote that we got is lower than the Rag War Council and stuff would then limit the A chapter council from working, because then we wouldn't have buy-in from chapters. I think that's ignoring the effect that us actually having chapter council meetings would have on buy-in and enrollment. So that's one thing. Additionally, as we decide on finalizing bylaw changes, if they're going to happen, and adopting a new set of bylaws if that's going to happen, one factor that we have to keep in mind during that process is timing. And while you make a really good point that I don't think we've ever had as much investment in an online meeting as we've had in like regular councils, I don't think it's reasonable to be waiting in another 9 months from now as a
I
time frame.
okay. I have a question about that. I
Okay,
was under the impression that the vote was amongst 13 chapters. Is
I
which
was
number is
13.
correct?
I'm maybe misremembering.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify which number was correct. Does anybody know?
I can look it up right now. Yeah, it was 13.
Okay. I kind of
Do you
want to
mind if I?
respond to a couple of those just real quick from my point, and then we can move on to someone else. Just I do think that the number of Dagorhir chapters involved is important. I obviously think committees should be made up of the people who want to be there, but from my own perspective, a lot of the issues that this council would address are issues that have been resolved at Ragnarok traditionally, and that we would, by effect, be stripping people who go to Ragnarok of their voting rights unless they want to go through another new means that they haven't shown they're willing to do. So my main issue is I have I've through my chapter put up my issues with the bylaws. Most of them are fairly minor. And most of them don't matter for my voting and my role as president of the DBGA. Um, I think something in the vein of what this is, something looking very like what this is perfectly fine. If it works, it works. I have concerns about the lack of buy-in from Dagorhir chapters, and I don't think I'm dismissing the people who don't want to be a part of it because they don't feel that it's going to go anywhere. I think that's actually kind of a part of my point in that people don't want to spend a lot of their time online on things that they don't feel palpable go places. And I think that's a real problem with online voting in Dagorhir so far. And so that was kind of my point. So I just wanted to put that back in. I think Mace wanted to talk next.
Thank you. I was just going to say that regardless of participation in this committee, Ragnarok War Council has been asking for online voting for several years now. And it's been shot down in the past, often because, we'd never done it and we are old and don't like new things. But through the pandemic, we have made things move forward. And it's easy to see why somebody who's not in the Atari is hesitant to think that they can do anything to move the game forward as the way things stand now. But I do believe that after a transition period, you will get your online quorum. It's not going to be easy. There's going to have to be people dedicated to making it happen, but they're going to do it. They want it, and I think when they see some positive movement, more people will jump on board, whether they're new chapters or older chapters who are taking a back seat, just watching and stuff like that. So that's just how I feel about getting an online quorum.
Please.
I actually pretty much agree with what May said, man. It might be slow getting started here, but once people realize that it is the new process, that's how we're gonna go. It's the simplest way is like if you want to vote, here's how we vote. I mean that's what it's gonna be. As far as what you were saying about RAG and voting in person at RAG, how many proxies are there at RAG for the chapters that can't make it to RAG? It's no different. It functions just the same. If somebody can't make it, by all means, let us know. Give yourself a proxy, give your chapter a proxy. That's what we were doing for the committee voting. Let's say I couldn't make it for my chapter. I had somebody else show up once or twice. It's gonna wind up working the same way once people get used to it. If you want to make the change, here's where you have to go.
And last, just speaking to the nature of building engagement, people are only going to be willing to engage in something if they feel empowered. Like, as I'm a teacher by trade, and that's one of the primary tools that I can use to motivate students, is if a student feels empowered and feels capable, then they're going to be willing to do way more than a student that isn't empowered and doesn't feel like they can do something. That same principle applies here. If a chapter, as many chapters do, don't feel like something's gonna do anything, but then they're not gonna be invested, and that's why we didn't get a lot of participation in the chapter council. But if, or not the, excuse me, in the bylaws committee. But assuming that there is an online forum that is actually how a chapter council functions, the fact that that is like members will actually be having the ability to do stuff there will in and of itself boost engagement and enrollment significantly.
And you've said it twice, Aha. I agree with that. That the lack of sincereness, I guess, caused a lot of people not to come in. You know, as it actually progressed through the committees, we saw a few chapters step out. We saw new people come in. It was a very, I don't know, it was almost steady. You know, we had a bunch of new chapters at the end that hadn't been for the whole process, and we had some in the beginning that couldn't make the end. So I'd like to say more people started showing up when they could once they saw we were making progress, and that's where that is.
Any other commentary?
I do think one of the reasons why we had such a drop off there with the committee was that people were starting to burn out on weekly meetings every week. And once we hit the 4th of July and Father's Day, and they got a break and out of that pattern, that's when we really saw the drop in attendance. It was those two factors. I think a chapter council with a predictable calendar that's more spread out and less intense would have less of a struggle with it.
Okay, I do just want to, it seems like you're speaking to involvement in the committee. I'm purely talking about the vote at the end, which is literally just a reply on a form. I agree that committees should be small and made up of the willing. I think that trying to encourage people to show up to committees that aren't interested in it just creates more talking time that doesn't go anywhere. But I'm speaking to the vote at the end, which didn't meet a quorum of the people who had participated in the committee.
So
And that,
y'all said, sorry, we're gonna go ahead.
and I think that goes back to the predictability of the schedule. If people knew to expect that vote and were watching for it, we might have gotten more of a response.
Wasn't the vote like announced at the beginning? I was pretty sure people said we're going to vote on this at the beginning. I could be mistaken there.
Yes, but there were questions about the timeline as we went on. That's the predictability part, like when to expect that vote.
I do agree that the vote probably, if it had like been 3 weeks or 4 weeks long, probably would have gotten more responses.
My question is, have those emails that was sent to, it was sent to all the chapter emails, supposed the current list of current active chapters, have we verified those emails? How many of those chapters actually never got the email?
So I can speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
So what I used when I put together that mailing list, which ended up having over 100 names on it at the end, just not 100 chapters, obviously. Obviously, they're individuals. So I use the existing spreadsheet, which at the time had, I don't know, 70 or 90 different chapters, and it had not been updated. I'm not quite sure what the most recent update. I think I noticed a date of 2019. So which is why I not only used the email addresses, but also reached out in Discord and Facebook as well, and just slowly people responded. Some people responded saying that they don't want to participate, but they're watching what's going on and they support it. It was just such a variety of people who, and a lot of them really did get burned out. I got that too. People who were participants earlier on just got burned out. So yeah, that's how the email address was put together, if that makes sense. We just used the
Okay.
spreadsheet that existed.
Okay, that actually makes my point is we actually still don't know how many active chapters are, and we don't know how many of what percentage that 13 chapters makes of the total. There's no real measuring stick for that right now.
There's a bit of a measuring stick, but I think that kind of actually is my point a little bit too, is that we haven't verified who all's still in and who's not. But and that makes it hard to say this is what the Dagorhir chapters want if they haven't. But we do have an absolute measuring stick, which is a quorum as defined by the document, which was not met of the 24 chapters that had participated, and we knew about it. Like, I'm not saying this is a reason to not do this. I want to make that 100% clear. What I'm saying is, what can we do to fix that problem? What, other than just having meetings and hoping people show up and engaging with them, what can we do to fix that problem before we switch?
That's what I've been trying to say. We can show chapters that their input is valued and matters by implementing a nationalized bylaw structure and showing them that they actually have power.
A nationalized bylaw structure that they didn't put input into.
If we're gonna go in circles in terms of we don't know how many chapters there are, and we have this number of chapters that have participated total, and then only this many have actually put in input, we could go in circles forever and never accomplish anything. At some point, we need to make a decision and decide that if we have some percentage of approval for something, that's fine.
Okay.
In terms of sending out surveys and getting responses, having done this in for a number of different purposes, getting like 20% feedback on the form that I send out is usually pretty good. And so
Okay.
as for something that doesn't actually people don't necessarily have a personal stake in, I think roughly 50% turnout, which is what we got. 13 out of 2024.
Okay. Fair enough. Anybody else have any further commentary or questions?
Are we talking generic process commentary?
I'm
Or are we moving into comments about the bylaws?
I mean, as I said before, I would prefer several of us have expressed a time limit tonight, so I would prefer we not get into too much into the painting of the house and the digging of the weeds, but I do know the bylaw committee would like some input, if it's there to be had. So if people have comments on the bylaws or questions, we can go there, but I would prefer if we limited it as much as possible time-wise.
Yeah, I make a couple of generic statements without any specificity.
Sure.
One of the things that I was really driving towards the first few meetings that I participated in, and for the proposal that I presented to the group, is the concept of objective evidence. If we're going to say that somebody has a responsibility, we need to be able to clearly articulate exactly what that responsibility is, and we need to be able to define objective evidence that demonstrates that that responsibility has been performed. I don't see anything even close to that anywhere in here. And in addition to the objective evidence being performed, there should be a role in the structure that decides whether or not, in their opinion, the objective evidence has been met. This will give us, for the first time ever, a very clear window into the inner workings of the body that runs Dagorhir, that every single member of Dagorhir can at any point ever determine whether or not they feel that Dagorhir is being run fairly everything that people say they're going to do is being done, that we can clearly see that the people running the game are doing their jobs. So that's my first and most strong high level commentary.
Did we have any comments or questions about that? Okay, Ericos, you said you had another point.
Okay, my second point is when we talk about candidates for positions, it's not well defined if there are any requirements for candidates for positions except that they have to be in good standing, not suspended, and all that stuff. But also, I think there should be an age requirement. I don't think anyone below the age of 18 should be considered. Because as a minor, they can kind of sort of do whatever they want and not be really held to account for it. Also, I believe the positions, every position regardless, should have a background check performed at the expense of the candidate. If anyone recalls the last time we had elections, there was a ha-ha from a bunch of people that all we have to do is have 1,000 people say they're running for office and we'll bankrupt Dagorhir. And it was kind of like, yeah, I thought of that too. And I was hoping other people wouldn't think of it, but clearly, of course, they did. So if we had that implemented, that would be a way to make sure that the people who actually want to throw their hat in the ring legitimately have a vested interest in continuing the process. If anyone recalls the last round of elections, the vast majority of people who threw their quote unquote threw their hat in the ring never followed up. So those a few things around the elections, candidates, the background checks, and all that needs to be well defined. What's in the bylaws now? Let me back up a bit. First things first. I just want to say, I know I started in with the negative, and I apologize for that. This is fantastic. There are so many things in here that you've thought of that are just spot on. I do want to say that. And I do want to say that this body of work, quite frankly, is very good. You have, in my mind, hit the like 85%. It's like almost there. So I did want to back up and say, fantastic work. You have literally hit almost every single point I would have in here, and great job. But if we can tighten up these things, it would become something that I think we could say will be sustainable. Here's my third and final generic comment. Whatever we build here, you have to know that maybe not the first round, maybe not the second round, maybe not the third round, but at some point bad actors are going to be voted into office and they will not be serving the best interests of Dagorhir. It will happen. It's just a question of when, and it's just a question of how much damage can they do. I think anything that requires a vote to change the bylaws, once we have these bylaws nailed down, should either be a unanimous or an ultra majority. Those are my three comments.
Hi, this is Luda.
Yeah, go ahead, Luda.
First off, I want to say, Ericos, I think that those are all very good points to make. And I'm just wondering, are you planning on sending those to Dominus? Because I know that Dominus is putting together a list of feedback for the AWC, and the committee is planning on meeting to discuss the feedback that Dominus and the AWC put together. Because I want to make sure that that's captured there. Over.
I thought this was a BOD meeting.
Yes, so I'm referring to what we decided at the AWC meeting in order to get feedback from the Aratari. Now, if you think that there needs to be a separate course for the BOD meeting, I may not know the business process of that. I know that after the AWC votes, the BOD will have to vote. So maybe it's included in there, but I just want to make sure that those are captured. Over.
Oh, I apologize. I heard someone say that they would like some high-level feedback during this meeting. That's what I thought I was doing.
And I definitely taken those notes. I just
Okay.
want to make sure
Sorry.
that Dominus is also receiving that as well, because we
Okay.
can
Oh, sure
talk
thing.
about your
Of course.
points. But yeah, okay,
Sure thing.
that's it. Was there someone else who wanted to speak? I think Aha.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Those are good points. The 18 years old minimum, I think, is a very good idea. So that's an excellent addition. I do want to point out that any under what we do have now, any candidate running for BOD positions does have to undergo that. That is item 5.5 under election.
Yeah,
I think you cut
I
out
of
there a little
course,
bit.
I of course saw that that's in there. My only point was there's
Apologies.
literally nothing wrapped around it in terms of who's doing it, how it's being performed, if it's objectively reviewed, how it's reviewed, what the determination is of whether or not a person is deemed fit, or they're shared with the public. There needs to be just a little more meat around that.
I misunderstood them, but I apologize.
Do we have any other comments from the board or questions from the board for the committee members who are here?
Yeah, I'm reading it right now. For you, Ericos. Actually does say who's supposed to be doing it. There is an election officer chosen for each election. I don't see exactly who pays for it. That can be a simple addition we can take care of. But there is somebody who reviews them and whose job it is to take care of them.
Sure.
I understand what you're saying. Are they going to be released to the public?
Gotcha.
How do they determine whether or not a candidate is fit?
Each chapter council makes that determination.
I
So
will.
in other words, they would be available to the chapter council members.
Yes.
Okay.
I will say that in previous elections, there had literally, when I was an AWC member, all I got was this person is clear, and I changed that this year to actually send the background that I got to the various AWC members, because it's not my job. It wasn't my job in that role to say who was and
Right.
wasn't clear. It was my job to say who got it.
And that's the difference between saying, yes, I acknowledge you're an ex-murderer, and we don't want ex-murderers on our board.
Cool. Any further questions, commentary?
Last question is on funding. How will this organization be funded?
I would like to comment on that because I've read it and I've talked about it a lot. Based on the bylaws, they really want the chapter council to decide that. And on all the discussions I was listening into, I do see that it says that there are no dues, which is a thing I approve of. And I think that there are a lot of options: merchandising, donations, whatever. But I'll go ahead and let the committee respond to that. Luda, if you'd like to handle it or pick someone to handle it, thanks.
Thanks, Ursus. Aha, did you want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah, the main idea here was for the assuming these get adopted, the then chapter council to make that determination, and then of choosing funding projects, which then the executive board would follow up on and implement. We did talk about several possible options for funding streams, and one of the more popular options was through a flagship event model, where the national organization has several very large events spread throughout the year, where some percentage of the attendance fees for those events go to fund the national organization. But that was only one option that got discussed, and we didn't think it was our place to choose any single funding stream or combination of funding streams.
I would like to say that I think from an initial seed money perspective, I believe, legitimately speaking, all of the money raised through GoFundMe would by right belong to the new group, this group, as it's converting to the group, however you want to phrase it. I don't know, it's complicated. But I think there's that seed money, and there's also that model for future use if they want it, or the event flagship model also sounds interesting. And merchandising on the website was a possibility, but I do believe that should be left up to the chapter council. I do I do appreciate restrictions on that being placed in the bylaws. I appreciate that part a lot. That's probably my favorite part of it. Other commentary, questions, discussion points?
Yeah, this is Luda. I was just gonna say that is definitely was one of the most heated discussions was about funding. So yeah, people really put a lot of thought into that, and I appreciate the work that they did for that. Over.
Any further comments, questions, concerns? Okay, I want to take this moment to, much like Ericos, address the positive after I've addressed my concerns. I actually like a lot of this. I think it's really good. And even the parts I don't personally care for, and I would vote against as a chapter rep. If that's what everybody else wants, I'm pretty much okay with them. So I like it a lot. I think a lot of work was done in here. I tuned into the first meeting and then another meeting after that and realized, as actually I'm at work currently, that I work Sunday nights and this was never going to be a thing for me. And I realized how much I got a glimpse of how much work was put into this and what effort there was to be fair and to listen to a lot of voices. And I really appreciate that. And I note that there's a lot of clever and intelligently worded parts to these bylaws. And I would like to thank the committee who are here for that. And I guess if any of them, the people who worked on it are listening to this later, thank you too. Do we have any further comments, questions, or concerns on this matter? All right. I'm not seeing anything, so we'll go ahead and it's been considered to be discussed. We can review it for voting at a future date once any changes have been made. And though we technically, I think, can vote before AWC, I would prefer to wait to see what AWC does and then review from there. Do we have any other business to handle?
I've got kind of a sensitive question for you, Ursus, if you don't mind answering it for me.
Sure.
As fall approaches, how does the transition of leadership in Tartarus Invictus go?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually talking to a few people. We're trying to set up a battle for next month, and I believe I have at least 1 or 2 people who are interested in the job. So we'll be working on that in the next month or two. I don't expect to be in charge of Tartarus Invictus by the end of the year. And
Okay,
in charge is really just a paperwork thing anyway. But yes. Any other questions, commentary? All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you for coming. We'll set up another meeting via email.
Thanks. This is really good.
Good night, everybody. I got to get back to work.
See ya.
Recording will be up on YouTube shortly.
Awesome. Thank you very much for recording that.